PokerStatic.com. We bring you the interviews you want to hear. Now with your hosts, Bret Oliverio and Eric Bickel, the Poker Static Hot Seat.
What's up? Thanks for checking out the Poker Static Hot Seat. Bret Oliverio, Eric Bickel, and joining us tonight, she has over $2 million in career tournament earnings, countless more in cash games, as I've been reading about. It's Vanessa Selbst. Vanessa, what's happening?
Hey, how's it going? Good.
You're welcome. No problem. Thanks for coming on. So, where are you joining us from today?
Right now I'm in Hammond, Indiana, which is like 25 minutes outside Chicago. I was here for the World Series of Poker Circuit Regional Championship, the 10K event, and that's still going on. They're down to like 15 players now, but I'm not one of them.
And how did that go? Was it frustrating thing, or did you bust out early?
It's only frustrating. I mean, I'm on a good streak right now, so it's hard to be frustrated, I guess, but like I had the same thing happen to me in this tournament in Festa, where I was like deep, actually. Not pretty deep, but I had a pretty big stack. I was fifth in chips, and then I just like got into a huge cooler situation. Like I got trip nines on a queen 9-5-9 board against queens in a re-raise pot. So kind of one of those situations. Once the pot's re-raised pre-flop, you can't really avoid it, no matter how big your stack is. I was obviously pretty happy once the 9 hit, but very sad once he turned his hand over.
Right.
So it happens.
You know what's funny though is that when did the tournament start, Vanessa?
It started on Monday.
Monday. I think we were in contact with you or some of your people, and they were like, "Yeah, she's pretty sure she's gonna bust." And I thought it was like even before it started. Like for some reason you just had a vibe, right? This wasn't gonna be your week,
yeah.
Or am I wrong?
Well, it's just like probability-wise, I've like done really well the last like 3 months or 6 months or whatever. So I'm kind of like whenever I go into a tournament, I just assume I'm gonna bust because it's completely impossible to make like as many final tables or whatever. So I'm just like sure I'm gonna bust now. But no, I mean I don't know. Yeah, sometimes you just get a sense. I don't know. Like it's weird because every time that I've won a tournament, I kind of felt like I was gonna lose it the whole time, and every time that I've lost, I kind of thought I was gonna win. So I try to go in thinking I'm gonna lose now. As my strategy.
Now, what's that like for you, sort of busting out of a tournament and having to stick around? I mean, obviously you've made a lot of deep runs, so, you've been around deep in a lot of tournaments, but when you do bust out early, do you stick around for a day? Do you like to get out of there? What's sort of your schedule like?
Well, I was hoping a vacation here in Indiana for another 3 weeks.
Right.
No. Usually I don't know, I try to balance between being a responsible adult and booking flights in advance. That's what I tried to do, but then you wind up a lot of times you bust out, you just want to get the hell out of there. Like, that's how I feel most of the time, unless you're, at PCA where there's water slides or something, and lots of drinking or something. But most of the time, I just want to get out of there, get home. I spend so little time at home, so I'm turning away from that responsible, book everything in advance, and now I just wind up paying twice because I book it in advance and then I rebook it and I book another flight. So. Yeah, you usually just want to get out of there, though. I mean, me at least.
How frustrating is it? Like, I mean, you've been so successful. What's been your longest cold streak? It seems like you've always had sort of a knack at the tournament thing. I would find it just incredibly frustrating, and that's probably the experience of most of the tournament players, to just go tournament after tournament after tournament without any sort of significant cash. What's it been like for you?
Well, my longest cold streak as of late has been these 2 tournaments that I haven't cashed.
2.
But in seriousness, when I started playing tournaments, I started out of cash games, and then I started playing tournaments 2007, I think. That year, I played a bunch of WPTs and a couple of EPTs. I probably played about 12 to 15 main events, and I didn't cash any of them. Not only didn't I cash, but I didn't even really get deep in any of them. And I was just really bad at deep stack tournaments. I would pretty much be sure to bluff off my chips by the end of day 2, no matter what. There was just too much time for me to bluff off all my chips. So that was a cold streak, but it wasn't even a cold streak. It was just I was playing tournaments badly. So after that, I kind of figured out a little bit and didn't really play for 2 years. So, I guess I've only really been playing tournaments, like knowing how to actually play tournaments for the last 6 months, and I've been on a hot streak since then. So we'll wait for the cold streak, but I'm not looking forward to it. That's for sure.
Now, do you think your experience in playing cash sort of before you jumped on the tournament circuit has helped? Because a lot of times we see it exactly the opposite. You know, a tournament player hits a big score, they jump into the big cash games.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that like players should learn cash before they learn tournaments, because you see so many mistakes, like especially in these deep stacked events. Everyone talks about like, oh, the fish make it profitable and now there's more pros. Honestly, I don't mind at all playing deep stacked with internet tournament pros, because a lot of them just have no idea once your stack is above 35 big blinds. Like, you'll 3-bet a hand and they'll just ship it in with pocket eights. Like, they'll raise and then you'll 3-bet and they'll ship it in with 55 big blinds with pocket eights because like they probably have the best hand. It's like, yeah, even if it's a spot where I'm 3-betting you light like 65% of the time, it's still like a really bad shove to shove in 55 big blinds. So you see them sort of going with their gut rather than actually like, they don't want to call with pocket eights because it's like really hard to play post flop against an aggressive player, so they just spaz out. And you know, I think those are that's where a lot of leaks come from. So I would definitely advise like learning cash games, and I think that has helped me. Once I stop bluffing off all my chips, now I can actually wait for hands, get some value. Obviously, I still bluff a lot, but not as much. So definitely like it's a mix. Like cash games, when I was just a cash game player playing tournaments, that's when I assumed everyone would fold way too much, and then I was just bluffing all the time. And now I've sort of like learned to balance. I think you have to learn cash games first, but I also think you can't just jump into tournaments and be immediately successful without realizing that there's, you know, a ton of differences between the two things.
Let's jump into your story though, more into, you know, how you got started. Were you one of these typical people that inspired by Moneymaker or something that you saw on ESPN? Did you play in high school, college? When did you get started?
Yeah, I played like, you know, when I was growing up, I played in high school with my friends. We used to keep score on a sheet of paper or whatever at lunch, but, you know, I wasn't really good. And then, but I was just better than them, which is all that really matters. It's probably like still the most profitable game that I played in. But honestly, like I got good in college when I discovered like online poker forums. I had a home game with really good players that were really into it, and they turned me on to poker forums. And just discussing strategy with people and playing online, obviously, Poker Stars, you know, wherever. But, like, just playing a bunch online and, like, you know, just talking strategy with so many people. And now those are all the people that are, you know, doing really well and successful. And so, yeah, it's a pretty basic story. I'm just another internet kid with a dream.
Yeah, but how did you build your role? Because, you know, I'm looking at your bio and said, oh, you know, when she was playing cash, she could be found playing 25-50 up to 200-400. I mean, at what point did you start off like sort of grind your way up? Did it take a while? How'd you build your role?
Yeah, I think like I started out. Well, I definitely started out low. I started out maybe like whatever 5 cent, 10 cent, the way everybody else starts out, and sit and goes and stuff. And then just like grinding like $20, but mostly cash games. And then I had like a pretty stagnant first year. It was like hovering between like 0 and 20K in my bankroll for that whole like maybe 7 or 8 month period. And then I just had a summer after I graduated college where I just sort of things took off. I started playing 10, 20. Like I sort of just built it really. I don't know, something clicked or something, but I made like my first 100K that summer, and then, you know, from then on just went on to win a bunch of money. And I would play 20, 25, 50, but the 100, 200, 400 thing is more of like a live thing when good games come up, and that's what I would never play that high until like a year or two ago. I've always been like a pretty big nit about bankroll management, actually, and I've actually always been a little bit jealous of people that were a little bit more reckless with their money, because when I was younger and the games were amazing, everyone remembers back 2005, 2006, the games were so juicy, and I definitely had the bankroll for 25-50, but I would play a lot more 10-20 just because the thought of losing 25K in a day, like I still couldn't stomach it, you know. So I wish that I had more gambling because I probably have made more money at the time, but so it goes.
How did you adjust along the way? Like, you know, everybody always talks about those sort of glory years in 2005, 2006, whatever, when the games were softer. But then as the games got tougher, how did you adjust? It seems like you never really had any speed bumps.
Well, I don't know. Like, logic, I think, is my strong suit. So, like, a lot of players remember things, like, have really good memories, remember things other players do, and that's, like, their strong suit. I can't remember things, but I just sort of figure them out on the fly always because I have to, because my memory is bad. So I think because I'm so good at logic, I just, like, figure out how a player is playing really quickly. And so I know the trends, I know the starting base assumptions that everyone has, and those change over time, but honestly, I like playing against good players more than I like playing against bad players because I think I'm really good at thinking one step ahead and figuring out what level they're on and just being one level ahead of them and quickly adjusting when they adjust to me or before they adjust to me, I guess. So I think because that's my strongest point, I've actually benefited more from the games changing so quickly because other people aren't able to adjust to the changing game as quickly.
Right. Is that not
now? Is it?
Go ahead, Bret.
I was going to say, is it easier for you to sort of pick up on those patterns online or live, or both?
Well, for me, it's definitely easier live. Like, I just think that there's so much more information being given to you at every point. You know, you could just look at someone and make a read. You know, you see, like, this is how old they are, or even what they look like, what kind of shirt they're wearing, or a story they told you about their kids, or a story they told you about, you know, anything. And that's going to lead me to play a hand in a different way. So that's why I prefer live poker, and I think that there's a lot more information. That's why I think I've been so successful at that recently.
That's so sick. What else besides like the online forums and like exchanging hands and things of that nature? I know you're a coach, obviously. Deuces Cracked. I assume you still are. Were you a member of a training site? Were there any books out there that were helpful to you?
Wasn't I a member of a training site? It's a funny question because I don't know when you guys got into poker, but training sites didn't exist when I was learning poker.
Sure.
We kind of like Deuces Cracked was the second one. Card Runners was obviously the first one, and we just sort of like, you know, the whole training site industry just took off from there. But yeah, I mean, like, I definitely read some books, like, you know, obviously Super System and I guess like Theory of Poker, all the classics that were out there. Again, at the time, there was maybe like 5 or 6 books or maybe 10 books and 2 really good books out there. And now there's just a whole wealth of like books, e-books, training sites. It's crazy. But I almost think that, you know, at the same time that it was a lot harder. It took longer to get good if you're a really good player and have really good logic and instincts. A lot of players now are getting mediocre or good, but without having those fundamentals because they're just sort of like getting spoon-fed this information and they're not taking the time to develop their own game. They're just mimicking other people's games. And if you're not like constantly thinking, like every time at a table, people talk about poker. Sorry, I'm all over the place. That's just how I am. But people talk at a table about like poker getting uninteresting and having mundane decisions. I don't feel like any one of my decisions is mundane because I'm constantly thinking about there's always different variables. And even if there's the exact same variables, I'm going to think about what did I do in this play the last time and how well did that work and should I change it? You know what I mean? So I just think there's a lot of people that are getting spoon-fed information that aren't taking enough time to really develop their own style. And if you're not going to develop your own style, you just can't be an elite player, like ever.
Well, it sounds like people also, I mean, just like it happens online, you go on autopilot, right? And you can't afford to do that at any moment if you want to maximize your results.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Like, autopilot is definitely something that is dangerous, but it's also something I don't think that a lot of players have anything else. They maybe make slight adjustments, like in a very small scope, like, okay, this guy is folding a lot to bets, so I'm going to bluff a little more. Okay, that's an adjustment, sure, but I'm talking about more metagame adjustments of, like, what am I going to do on this street in general to then make me get a better, like, I'm going to raise more rivers. I'm going to check raise more rivers because that's going to give me, not only is it going to be a good play now, but it's going to give me more free showdowns later. And I like free showdowns because maybe I call too much on the river. So I prefer when people don't thinly value bet me because I call too much. And if that's the case, how am I going to get them to stop thinly value betting me? I'm going to check raise more rivers so they're scared of the check raise and then they check behind with their hands that I would have called a bet against. You know what I mean? It's stuff like that that's like, I just don't think there's people teaching it, and it's everyone. You have to know every leak of your game. It's like I have leaks in my game. Everyone has leaks in their games, but you're not going to be able to correct all those leaks. It's just like if you were, then they wouldn't be leaks. But if you can spot them and before correcting them, just make adjustments that make those leaks less unprofitable for you, or actually can capitalize on those leaks through other adjustments in other parts of your game. And I think just having a whole game plan is something that most really, really good players do, and most everybody else probably doesn't.
Now, isn't it one of the worst feelings in the world to check raise the river? I mean, thinking you're making a genius play, and then boom, you're insta-called, or they ship it in on you. I mean, just that feeling is just brutal.
Yeah, it's true, but
I think I've done it a couple times only. Yeah, and when you get away with it, I mean, it's a good feeling.
Well, yeah, well, obviously, like, what you do on a bluff, but I'm also talking about, like, when you're doing it as a value bet, like, just, like, find more spots to do it. But, yeah, it's definitely, like, when I check raise all in with, like, the second nut flush or something, and then they just, like, snap move in over the top, giving me, like, 7-1, and obviously those are moments where you hate your life, but that's how it goes.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about the time that you left poker? When exactly was it? And obviously you made an amazing decision to come back. What's the history there?
Well, like I said, I think I was thinking about the game poorly. I was in a bad space. I wasn't cashing tournaments, and I just wasn't really happy. The lifestyle was hard. I think a lot of people, when they jumped into poker, they just got into like the Vegas lifestyle and staying up all night and partying, and it just wasn't healthy. So, and I also missed like school. I'd been out of school for 3 years. This was in 2008. So I went to law school, which is something I always wanted to do. And yeah, I had a great time at law school. I've had a great time. I'm still in it. I have 1 more year left to finish, but I'm taking this year off. And you know, at the same time that I really just played very, very little poker over those 2 years, but I just really missed it. I mean, I missed poker. Like I didn't think I would. I was so burned out. I thought I could just take some time off, but you know, more and more it became obvious that I really wanted to get back in the game. And then Mohegan Sun just gave me the perfect opportunity because I won that one. And between that and everything I had done in 2008 in the World Series, where I got a bracelet and then I got third, like in a heads up, like the next day or something like that. So between those things, I knew that I could, you know, probably get a good deal. And then obviously Stars, you know, get a deal, and it was sort of all made sense. It was a perfect time, but I just missed it. I mean, I think poker's one of those games that we've had so many people in the industry be like, "Oh, I'm quitting," and then they come back within like 6 months to 2 years, or 6 months to a year. I think 2 years was actually a pretty long.
I mean, maybe quitting and coming back's the key. Like, you know, like Sean Deeb. I mean, he quit, he came back, and every time he tweets, he's won a six-figure score, you know, a tournament.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, it's funny. It's like you could say that as a joke, but honestly, for me, quitting and coming back was like, it cleared my head. I've said before, I was in a space where like I was surrounded by too many good players, and I couldn't see what other bad players were doing. So someone would make like a really obvious bluff in a tournament, and I would be like, level myself, like, this is the most obvious bluff in the world. You know, I can't like you know, I would whatever, like it would go bet, and then they would call, and then I would check behind, and they would bet like when every single draw missed, when I would check again or something like that. And I was like, this can't possibly be a bluff because it's the most obvious bluff spot in the world. And then I would fold, and then of course they were just bluffing. So I think some time away from like really good players helped me, you know, sort of clear my head, like see what was actually going on, and just make some better decisions. And so basically, my advice for all the really good players is quit for the next 2 years.
Right, perfect, and you'll stay. Did you quit? Did you quit cold turkey, or were you still coaching? Were you still playing online a little bit? Like what was?
Yeah, like I was coaching still, for sure. I was playing online occasionally, but mostly I wasn't really playing online almost at all. Basically, it would be like I would win $300 in a prop bet from a friend, you know, or $500, and then they would transfer it to me, and then I would get drunk and play 1-2 or something like that, and then like bust it or something. And that happened like 4 or 5 times. But other than that, I wasn't playing online because I had to take all my money offline because I would just play, you know, instead of studying. And it was just like really, law school's a lot of work. No one told me that before I signed up, but it was a lot of work. So I just didn't have the self-control. So I took all my money offline, but I was still coaching, and I was still playing the occasional live tournaments. I played some prelims at Foxwoods each year. I played NAPT Mohegan Sun. I played Aussie Millions, and I played a few World Series events. So I played probably about somewhere between around 15 tournaments, you know, live tournaments those 2 years, including all the prelims and stuff.
Now, when you took all your money off the site, jumped into law school, was your plan to just graduate, become an attorney, and sort of leave poker behind forever, or were you not thinking that far ahead?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't thinking that far ahead. It was definitely something that I had considered, but it was like what I had said at the time was it'll always be a hobby of mine. Like, I don't know if I'll ever get back into it more seriously. I never planned to be a corporate lawyer. Like, I'm going to be a nonprofit lawyer, and that's always been the plan. So the great thing about nonprofit is you're like working for 40, 45 hours a week. In the really competitive, really like high-powered jobs, you could be working a lot more. But my plan was always to have like a 45-hour a week job. So that would have included poker. I just don't think anyone can reasonably. If you really love the game, it's just you're gonna love it forever. I mean, it's fun. And
Were you surprised? I mean, obviously you were, that you were able to sort of jump in and have so much success right away. You were able to clear your head. You were able to kind of get away from it a little bit. That obviously was good. You have this natural knack at adjusting and thinking ahead of people. But was there anything that surprised you about the game? I mean, did the game not as advance as much as you thought it might have, or were you just quicker at picking up the advances?
No, I think that is definitely true. I thought the game was dying. Like UIGA and all that stuff. And everyone's like, oh my God, it's the apocalypse of poker and everything's over. And so I was assuming that everyone was going to be like, 5-betting, whatever, like merging, whatever, throw in any internet poker word you want. Like they were going to be doing it all. And they weren't, they were still just playing. Like there's just a lot of fish playing. Like I said, the good players weren't, like the quote-unquote good players that saw the leaks. And I guess that surprised me, but I also surprised myself at how good I was playing against the supposedly good players. Like it's not that I think that they're bad or anything. I think there are a lot of really good players, but I guess I surprised myself at how quickly I was able to come back and think ahead of those players because, you don't expect it. You hear about everyone's success and you're like, well, I earned $0 this last, 4 months. Actually, I paid $25,000 in tuition. And so you're like, well, results. I'm down $25K. They're up like $1 million. So it was surprising. And it's obviously like I'm on a good run. I'm not going to deny that there's luck involved, I guess. So hopefully I can keep this up. We'll see.
Let's name some names. Who are some of the players that are out there on the scene that you really, really respect? I'm not asking you to talk shit about anybody, but who out there really just blows you away? Is there anybody?
Well, I haven't played with like a ton of people that I've said would like blow me away in like what I've seen of their play, but of what I hear and what I know of their games, like I really respect the games of like I know like Tom Marchese's done super well in tournaments. Jason Mercier, I think I really like love his style and how he gets people to spaz. Obviously Phil Ivey, but that's just like a given. But Phil Ivey, every time I play with him, the way he's just like intimidated everybody, it's incredible. Like I'm hoping. That's sort of like what I aspire to is just to intimidate people so much. And I've said before, like, I don't really care. If I make a bluff, like, I don't really care if you call or you fold. I'd rather you fold, obviously, but if you call, it's okay as long as I just put you in a really, really painful spot. As long as I, like, torture you for at least 3 minutes, like, I'm happy. Because, honestly, I do think there's something to that. Like, relentless aggression, is it controlled ways. Like, I'm going to say this, now everyone's going to go out and, like, 6-bet all in, pre-flop and whatever. No, I don't mean that. I mean, like, really just keeping the pressure on spots where you know that they can't stand the pressure, or it's going to be really tough too. I think just makes people fear you. And I think if people fear you, they play really, really poorly against you. And so that's why those players, I think, have really good controlled aggression and sort of get people to spaz out to them a lot more than they should.
Now, you mentioned Ivy's table presence, and I want to talk to you about yours. Just from what I've seen on TV, it seems like you do have a pretty intense table presence. That's sort of different than, especially a lot of the females you see at the tables. Usually they're laid back and they're giggly, and you know what I mean? At least that's my experience. A lot of them. Is that something you work on? Is that just your natural personality to sort of be intense and kind of into things?
Well, I'm not going to be the girl that, like, people, give me their chips or, like, tell me what they have or, like, don't bluff me or something because I'm a girl. Like, I'm just not – that's not what being a girl is going to get me. So for the people that decide to be extra friendly and flirty and whatever, like, if that's getting them chips, then good for them. For me, like, I'm just playing my game, and my game is being aggressive and putting a lot of pressure on people. And so I think with that comes, like, an intensity where – you just have to be, like, really confident. I usually am pretty confident at the table. So, I'm joking around, I'm laughing with people while the hand's not going on. But if I have cards in front of me, like, I get really intense because I think just showing people that you're serious about the hand conjures up these thoughts of, like, crazy. It's showing people you're really serious about the hand, but them also knowing that you're, like, kind of tricky and a little bit crazy, which I think is the image that I have. Just like makes them conjure up thoughts of you doing like really evil things, like, I don't know, 4-betting all in on the river as a bluff or something. I don't know, crazy stuff. So as long as you can do whatever I can do to give them that fear, I think is to my advantage.
Touching on that, Bret. Touching on that same sort of thought, how do people react to you? Just like on a personality sort of standpoint, when you're intense and you're there, do other people like? Are they put off by that? Do they not like being it? Because it's mostly male dominated. So are guys sort of uneasy that here's this strong woman and she's kind of balls to the wall? She doesn't care. Are people put off by that or what?
Right. I think that I'm definitely a strong personality and made more noticeable by the fact that I'm a woman with a strong personality, which is not the norm. And it definitely like it's difficult to notice me. I'm a strong presence at the table as well. Even when I'm not talking, people often, or not in a hand, people often said things like, call me like table captain or something, just from like the way I'm talking and stuff. But I've always said, like, I always leave an impression on people, or most of the time I leave an impression on people. I would say 90% of the time it's good and 10% of the time it's bad. And I'd rather have that be that than have me be just some random nobody, or something like that. So I definitely make some enemies along the way. Like, I probably make more enemies somehow. I don't do it on purpose. I don't know. Some people just are really put off by my image and my style. But I think most of the time, I can have a good time with people, and people, like to play with me, or, like me at the table in terms of just, in a friendly way or whatever.
Right.
I want to ask you about intelligence in poker, because you have the school of, people like you and Galfond and Cole South and, just the dang bro. Just went to top-tier schools, super intelligent, and it's very obvious. Then you have guys, especially a lot of the big-name pros who, they can't spell the right there on Twitter. You know what I mean? They can't. So it's weird. It's like they're successful or they've made a bunch of money, but at the same time, you have a group of super intelligent, successful poker pros. Where do you sort of judge intelligence in poker?
I think that intelligence is one of the most important things, and you're starting to see that. You're starting to see who's really doing well at these live tournaments now. Well, it's the younger kids. It's the ones that are smarter than other people and are outthinking other people. The big names, listen, there's a lot to speak of in experience, and there's a lot about instincts that is important in poker too. So if you have good instincts and you're very experienced, you're going to remember what works. You might not be able to articulate very well why it works, or go through a logical breakdown of a hand and sort of reading a hand range, but you'll make the right plays. But when it comes to adjusting, your experience isn't going to help you. It's actually going to hurt you. And if you're just used to being on autopilot for 15 years, that's actually going to hurt you. So I think that that's what's happening with a lot of these pros, that you see the ones, some of the big names are adjusting and becoming really good and getting better and with the internet generation. And I think those are the smarter guys, the ones that have really worked on their game and have the potential to do that. But a lot of the old school guys, honestly, were just like gamblers that were like, I can't make a living in a normal job. Like, I'm not someone that wants to do that. I'm going to go move out to Vegas and test my luck and, whatever. And that was how they came into poker, rather than it being like a mental exercise in a game. And so I do think within 5 or 10 years, it's going to be really hard for any of those guys to really do well at poker.
What do you think about, there's been a lot of sort of controversy, I think, recently. I think it's been a good thing about sort of like table manners. We have big-name guys. I'll name some of them. Daniel Negreanu, the way sometimes he acts at a table, people are going crazy. Tony G, everyone says he's a great guy, and I'm sure he is a great guy. But the way he acts is insane. Obviously, people have been upset with Helmuth for years. Everybody says he's a great guy, too. Same thing with Daniel. But there is sort of, I don't know, we're reaching a point now where I think people are starting to realize that, wait a second, some of this boorish behavior at the table it's not good for poker.
Right. Honestly, I'm not a TV network media, like a rater or whatever. I have no idea what the ratings are for better behavior, so I don't know what's good for poker. I'm not in a position to say that. I will say that I think that it's pretty bullshit, like what Phil Hemmings does. I've said so for years. I think he's like one of the biggest POSs, and I don't care how nice he is in real life. Like, I just am so disgusted, and I've done a lot I used to sort of I'm a very emotional player, so I was criticized a lot in early years whenever I was on TV if my emotions would get the better of me, and that's something that I've worked on a lot, because I think it's incredibly important, and I think that when there are blowups, it's just a game that, I don't know, it's like there's a code in poker. It's kind of weird, but when you're around, when you're around fish, you don't want to scare the fish, and you don't want them to leave the game and be upset. And when you're around fellow pros, there's just an etiquette thing where this is your profession. This is these are your coworkers, so you should treat them with respect. And there's also living in the world. There's a code of ethics that you should treat people in general with respect. So I think that when people just view poker, because I guess they get caught up with their emotions or something, and so they just view it as a place that they can go crazy at. I don't know. I think it's pretty pathetic a lot of the times, the stuff that you see.
So I want to ask you about your future. What's coming up? Are you just going to still be grinding the live tournament scene? Any television opportunities? Are you like the Heads Up Championship? I know you participated in that in 2009. Are you high stakes poker? Are you giving that a thought? What's coming up?
I'm hoping. I've been invited to the big game, obviously, a couple times, but I haven't been able to make it due to previous commitments. Hang on one second. There's like a feedback thing.
Yeah,
going on. I don't know if you can edit this.
Yeah, I don't hear it. If you could fight through it, we're almost done. I don't hear it.
Okay, I'll just fight through. And do you want to ask the question again?
Go ahead.
Sure. I want to ask you about your future. You know, what's coming up? Is it live tournaments? Are you going to be a lot of television opportunities? High stakes poker, maybe? NBC Heads Up Championship, the big game, obviously.
Yeah, I was invited to the big game a couple times. I had personal commitments, but I'm hoping. Well, I'm almost certainly going to be on the next time they're filming, which it won't be for a little while, so it won't be airing anytime soon, but probably around next year. Something is when I'll be on that. I've talked to the producers. I'm hoping soon to start playing on games like high stakes poker. I was on the Heads Up Championship 2 years ago when I had done well Heads Up, and then started disappearing from poker, and then I busted out first round on a bad beat. And, that's how it goes, and I didn't make it very far, and so I didn't get any airtime, and so I didn't get invited back. But I've talked to the producer. It seems like he's interested. So hopefully, I'm definitely open to TV cash games. I think they're really fun. It's like it's a different environment. It's a different game. And, live poker is always something I love to do. So I'll definitely be seeking out as many of those opportunities as possible.
Now, will you be playing staked, or will you play your own money? Say if you play high stakes, will you play your own cash?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to play, some of my own cash. I don't know, I might sell off a little bit of action. I don't know if I want to buy in for, a $200K bullet on high-stakes poker on my own money. But it's definitely going to be, in large part, my own money. I just think I'm going to play better if I have my own money on the line.
Right.
It's easy to call off a 30K bluff if it's not your money, but you start thinking about the implications of it. If just playing you have to play your game. It's like the same reason why in tournaments, honestly, deep in tournaments, I do the best, and I think that's why I've done every time that I make it deep, I get a final table or even top 3 or something like that. It's just because I think I play my A game by far more when there's a lot of money on the line. I guess I'm one of those clutch hitters or something. I respond really well under pressure. So for that reason, I just think it's better to play on my own.
Right.
Nice. Well, listen, we appreciate you joining us. We know you got a lot of stuff to do today. People can check you out on Twitter at Vanessa Selbst, correct?
No. That's some random person. I don't know. It's Dyslexic Duck. It's F. Yeah.
Sorry. So that's a fake Twitter account. That's some information.
That means
that means
you've arrived. Yeah, superstar.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Well, I've already been, apparently according to 2+2, when you've arrived when you have hate threats about you, so I've arrived probably 200 times by now.
Right.
But it's FSLEXCDUCK, and you can find me there. I also have a Facebook fan page under Vanessa Selbst. And I'll be starting VanessaSelbst.com pretty soon.
Awesome.
VanessaSelbst.com. Cool. Well, listen, your tournament results speak for themselves, and you've been really cool with us, so we appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much again. This is fun.